Greetings, y'all. Justin here. Thank you for tuning in. I just need to highlight a content warning ahead of today's episode, as this episode does contain sensitive subject matter about sexual trauma. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Living Once Twice, a lifestyle design and personal adventure podcast. My name is Justin. Come with me as I'm here to help you chart your course for creating the fulfilling life you desire. Join me as every Wednesday we'll dive into the inspiring guest stories, remarkable science, and useful strategies to help you create the momentum you need to take action towards designing your dream life. Remember, your dream life is waiting for you. It's time to go for it. You deserve it. All right, welcome back to Living Once Twice. As a bonus part of today's episode, we have Mr. Harvey Mills, life coach, basketball coach, founder of Imperfect Outlets, and the host of the Mills Pills podcast, to share with you all a poem that he wrote. And so with that said, I'm going to pass it on to Harvey.
Yeah, so I just like to caveat this with part of self-exploration and vulnerability. It comes in different forms and comes in different ways. It's not just talking to a therapist or psychologist or a life coach. It's writing, it's meditating, it's sharing with yourself. So a way that I like to indulge myself is a little bit of poem writing. It allows me to go through some of my exploration in an easier way, just kind of connect with what I'm feeling. And for me, I'm really bad with structure. So with it being in a poem format, it allows me not to have to worry about as much structure and just really kind of get my feelings out. So this is one of the ways that I work on my vulnerability, but I'm going to share this with the audience. This poem is called Relationship with Death. They came to me with a message about it. My voice heard it, but didn't recognize its presence. But clearly, I didn't like what hit me. As we gather at the altar, seeing the body in its shell state, the mold that's only used through this earthly understood measurement of time. Body present, but mind absent from it. At such a young age, I couldn't separate the two. Just figured I might need to understand if it's destined to happen to everyone. I hate the way we met, but you've been with me now longer than most of my friends. Anger through this state of grief begins a journey of fear, limiting my circle to protect the pain. The mind absent from the body I've gotten to know brings me no comfort. If I choose wisely, I won't have to worry about it for now. And some relationships aren't chosen, but surround your village. Questions like, what could be your purpose if one day you'll be gone? Only able to start answering when I'm willing to find out. This conflict making the mind grow sharper. Peace is the gauge of the clarity in which you deal with the conflict. Every time I lose someone, the dagger hits different. My mind has no choice but to deal with it, but I really don't want to. My growing mind begins to accept this fate as the nature of life. My third eye helps me focus in on this meaning. Then I thought to myself, who were you at 7 years old? I don't know, but I'm not him now. I didn't have to have a proper funeral for him to be okay with the fact that he is gone. Or do I still have some remnants of the 7-year-old boy? Even though I didn't lay him to rest, I hope I've accepted his death. Although he taught me something, I easily moved on. As I gathered, I let go. As I believed, those thoughts sought more understanding. Death has been there every step of the way. I didn't acknowledge the magnitude of her overall presence. With these physical eyes, I see, but my mental eyes had been shut. The memory of the mind lay stained in the moment spent with loved ones. The enrichment they gave your mind, always reminding you of their impact. I've grappled with you for a long time. Being at peace with our conflict continues to grow my capacity. The relationship is so genuine, never wavering, and very consistent, unexpected, but to be understood, even if not aligned. I'm learning to deal with you and therefore bringing joy to my life. You have set an example for the constant physical encounters of life, a shelf life that is to be appreciated. If ignored, it stains the overall consciousness passed down. The physical world can only help me see but so far, but to understand, I must dig deeper into me. As I relate and connect the dots, this never ending puzzle urges us to just keep gathering the pieces. I learned to love you enough to let my thought of you go, then realize you will never leave. Here to show me why I must give gratitude and show appreciation. In this limited space, I can only take my memories into this unlimited space. Our relationship with death is what gives us life. A guaranteed physical endpoint with no mental ending in sight. The essence of the unknown recognizes its inconclusivity. Forever thankful for your presence, I will release the thoughts of you to truly live. But I will always love you for what you continue to teach me. As our status remains, it's complicated.
Whew. Wow. Harvey, man. Just sitting on that. For you, once again, what sparked that in your heart to come up with and put that out?
I was listening to the guru that I listen to talk, and he talks about why we have such a bad relationship with death. And he explained that if our communities embodied everybody, then death would actually be a lot more common and we would be at peace a little bit more to bring it into the perspective of life because we're constantly going through death in some way, shape, or form, whether you're killing off a form of yourself, whether you're letting a belief go to step into a new belief, or whether you're seeing in the physical form losing somebody physically but their conscious remains with you through the memory of them and things like that. So, in listening to that, I started to go through my own exercise of what my relationship with death was. And death has always kind of been something that I never really dealt with emotionally, but I always knew it was there. Right. But this allowed me to go through an exercise that gave me clarity to a little bit more about how common death really is within our life cycle, not
Mhm.
just the ending of our physical being. Because, in the totality of this conscience, our mind is literally separate from our body. And when we go to the altar and see somebody in their state of not having their mind, their body's just not with their mind anymore. But what do we remember of them? We remember what their mind made of that space. We remember the moments that they gave us something that their mind gave to that physical body that we saw. And that's what sticks in our heart. So, like, when I started to go through that exercise, it was like, okay, well, I'm getting more at peace with this, but let me just write something that allows me to feel what death is a little bit and what it means to me and what our relationship has been, right? And it started off rocky in the beginning because I didn't understand it. Now I'm trying to relate it to more of my everyday life, but I remember losing people in my life that it really just kind of hurt. But I tried to numb the pain by not thinking about it or doing something else. But this is really more common than we think. I want us to be able to really take a second look at how much death plays a part in our life to really truly live because we have to appreciate the fact that we don't know nothing and that ultimately at some point we'll die and we don't know that end date. That allows us to live in a more seeking way because we don't know that end point. And that's our relationship with death is it allows us to look at life in a very appreciative way if we can really understand it.
Wow, that's a very powerful and humbling description
Mhm.
of it, and there's so much that you shared that really stands out to me, Harvey, from the aspect of there's different forms of dying. We all
Yes.
can easily go straight to the physical form, but when you talked about the dying off of beliefs or belief systems, habits, things of that nature, like, as we go through our evolution process, like, yeah, those things, that's another form of death that
Mhm.
allows the rebirth of something new,
Right.
and
And could I say this too
oh,
to add a balance to that? I'm realizing a lot through my health and wellness journey how much stuff I haven't really allowed to die. That's
mm,
holding me hostage to fear,
mhm,
right? To that fear-based thinking we were talking about. And it's all of those things that are holding me hostage to fear are thoughts of something that I haven't let die to go into this next phase to live better.
mhm.
And that was another dynamic of this poem that allowed me to kind of surface some things within myself to understand the commonness of it and how I can really be at peace to really help people look at this life in a different way, to really help people see it in a way of like we're renting this. We're renting this
Hmm.
body, we're renting this time that we got. We're just here for a short minute of time as far as in the physical form. But if we were to encounter each other as just minds, we wouldn't even know where those barriers came physically. We would just be consciousness, right?
Hmm.
So I think that if we understand death, we understand that when a person really dies physically, their conscious, what they've embodied in their conscious goes into the cosmos of what is our universal conscious. It's still a part of us. So they never leave us. They left the impact that allow them to stay in our lives. And that even though death is like in the physical form, it's there. It's not like it's a way to live, right? It's a way to understand living. And I don't know if I even explained that right because I'm still going through some of this exercise of understanding what it means to me. But that just really let me kind of be at peace with the fact that this is a common thing. If I was to die, it wouldn't stop the overall balance of
Hmm.
life. But the way I live is conducive to how I look at death. And if I'm able to appreciate life every second because I don't know when I'm going to die in
Hmm.
the physical form, then I can live a life that's actually conducive to me loving life and appreciating life and not around fear and thought and all this stuff. It's more around being present,
Woo! Woo! We gotta go deeper into that because
right?
what you shared, it does make sense. And I've heard this kind of stoic philosophy that's also a part of the of stoicism, is my understanding, is to live with that, not a fear of death, but just once again, it's a reality. It's not nothing to numb yourself to, but like you were saying, because you know that life is finite, I am
Mhm.
going to live my life in this certain way. So maybe I don't let certain things get to me, or maybe I take a different approach when it comes to my values or materialism and things of that nature. And I also think more consciously about what legacy I'm leaving from day to day, because like you said, that lives on. And one that I think of immediately is, I mean, there's so many historical figures, but like Tupac's been dead, what, over 25 years. But I think to myself, like the legacy that he's left, the impact that he's made, he always had a consciousness of death and operated in a certain way, which he lived full. And I always go to that as an example in my own mind, but not to say that you were going through, you were thinking about Tupac, but it's just in terms of like a legacy or the way that you move and the way that you operate or what you allow. If you know that death is inevitable, then why live in fear and not just chase the things that your goals, your dreams, your aspirations, and go for them, because you don't know when your time is going to be up. And last year was a great example of that for so many of us.
Right. And Guru even goes deeper as far as like the idea that we have, going back to beliefs, right? When we talk about how, like, if a person believes they're going to heaven, right? What's stopping you? If you believe that, why don't you go?
Mhm.
And so it's like when I think about something like that, our nature is actually that we know that we don't know a lot of this stuff and that we need to continue to go through the seeking and we don't want to end this world because we don't know what comes next. Even though like we try and have like this good take on death, like this stuff is really here to be understood. And back to kind of what I was saying before, as far as like our community, right? Like if our community was the world, we would deal with death every day, even in its
Mhm.
physical form, because people die every day. We would genuinely feel for everybody,
Mhm.
but we don't, because our bubbles get so small. But I want to be able to change the paradigm of that and look at death in a different way because ultimately I want to live my life in a different way. I don't want to live my life catered to what somebody's giving me. I want to live my life catered to what I'm constantly learning and understanding and seeking for myself and allowing to resonate in my heart.
And that piece right there is almost the foundation of this living once twice philosophy. It's
Mm,
waking up to that consciousness that you get to write your own script and you get to be a conscious member or just active participant in that.
mhm,
And we come from a structured system where you're supposed to do things a certain way. At this age, you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to get your degree, go to college, get yourself a well-paying job, have your family, cash it in for 20, 30 years later,
mm.
save everything till 65. So I like what you're talking about, instead of like changing that paradigm and you deciding what's fulfillment, what's success, all of these things for yourself, and exploring that and answering those questions, I think is a powerful part of the process in developing your new belief system or just challenging your current belief system. So I just love the fact that you are about us like, let's put this card out on the table in terms of our relationship and our understanding and exploration of death as a whole.
Right. And that was the whole point of that exercise, was to get the gears going on this thing that we've put in such a small bubble that's a part of the nature of our life. It comes with the balance of our life. So why do we look at it as something? And then when I think about writing about death too, I think about dark. I think about being a Black man in America, right? And we have so much resonation with looking at something death, dark, Black as something bad. And I didn't want to look at it that way anymore, because I didn't want to look at myself as death. I don't want to look at myself as just Black. I want to look at myself as, if it is Black, it's good. If I am understanding death, I'm understanding the good of it. I'm understanding that I can appreciate death for what it is, because it allows me to live my life in a more efficient way. When we feel death, it makes us reevaluate how we live life.
And going back to that, Harvey, of rewriting that narrative on death, of it not being associated. And we know that the whole color aspect of anything dark is viewed negative.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you were talking about, how we can gain an appreciation for all aspects of life, of being able to live, to laugh, to learn, to love, to let go, to build, to connect, to create, to interact with folks. Like this whole experience that we have at our fingertips. And going to what you were sharing in the interview, of just the experience of being present in it all.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, yes, we know it's finite, there'll be an end of the physical form of it. There's still a beauty and an appreciation of that. And I don't think we would get there if we continue to numb ourselves about death. If we continue to numb ourselves or avoid it or be fearful of it, to what you were saying, we lose the beauty or the appreciation of what could be a life well lived and how we define it.
Right. And that's the danger of not being vulnerable. You start to get numb to not dealing with your emotions. And that's dangerous, because when those emotions arise again, you don't know how your mind takes it. You just kind of got to take it. And it causes us to sometimes feel like we're going crazy. But to understand it is what's given us that peace to say, no matter what the conflict, I'm at peace. Like, it's not going to change my ability to come at peace with whatever circumstance that I'm being shown. And that's why talking about some of these deeper, darker things that have more of an effect on our society, and just looking at them in a different way, I think that's the nature of the book that I'm writing with Balancism. It's just bringing a balance to the nature of how we're looking at things, and having a positive outlook even on so-called negative things. Because once again, a lot of this information is just given to us. But how we decipher it for ourselves determines how we present our state of being or our state of mind. I want to have a relationship with death that I can still smile no matter what the circumstance of death is going on in front of me. I can still be at peace. I'm not saying people won't hurt from being connected with people in a certain way. It always hurts to lose something that you become somewhat attached to. But I think the importance in that message is to not be too attached to something too much, because we should be attached to the consciousness of life, right? Like the totality of life, not just one thing that is a part of it. And, you can get attached to mama, daddy, family, things like that. But there's so much life out here that's waiting to attach to you. So I think even with my understanding of death, like, it's waiting to attach to you so you can have peace with it. It's waiting for you to go through the process of it so you can understand it. If you numb yourself from it or keep yourself away from it, you'll always feel baffled and bothered when it arises. And you'll only know it from the pathway you've paved for your idea of it, your thought of it. And that's what drives us crazy, right? Those thoughts turn into feelings.
Going back to Harvey, me and you can keep going on this, but we'll keep it short. But going back to what you were talking about, being at peace, and how a perspective on death can put you at peace with circumstances. How does that play into being, for you, a Black man here in America during these times where we've got everything that's happened from police brutality? You've got a society that views Black people, African American identifying people, a certain way. Does death factor into any of your at peace, as you also have to grapple with navigating just that experience of when you step outside in the world, you might be perceived a certain way, or there might be certain type of energy that comes your way just because of the color of your skin? Does death allow you to be even at peace with just that state of being?
I think being able to go through what it means to me gives me a little bit more peace. But I think what we deal with, especially being Black men in this society, is, of course, the fear based thinking. But we also get caught up, like I said, in our thoughts. And I think understanding death allows us to understand that some people have sacrificed what they felt was right for us to be in this present position right now when we think about some of the things that have been done. But if it hasn't been done to me, what am I doing? And how am I perceiving? And I think I want to get away from the fight of being Black, right? And get to the space where I'm at peace with other people's conflict of me being Black and can
Mm.
speak to that. But most of my journey when I first started this wellness, was it always turned out to be a fight for me. It's like I'm fighting for something. But being in this fight mode is only bringing out an energy that doesn't line up with my peace. And therefore, it doesn't allow me to go through conflict in a constructive way. And as I've continued to go through this process, I'm understanding like my peace is vital to me having any kind of clarity in anything that I'm trying to understand. My peace, simple peace. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's not necessarily given to us, but if I look at it a little bit different, because of the struggle we have, we're a little bit more connected to it. And if we can lean into that, then I think it'll remove the thought and allow us to go through the exploration of feeling what we've been feeling and moving forward into what we can manifest or bring about now that things have changed. Because as
Mhm.
much as we can say things have happened, we can also say things have changed. But where do I insert myself in that space?
Yeah, I love this, the perspective, Harvey, of all this. And I've had this conversation of being able to lean into the curiosity. It was even refreshing to hear you just talk about, like, yo, there's people who've lost their lives for me to be in this position. I need to understand and see that there's some privilege in that. And what do I want to do with that?
Mm,
Because yeah, if this was 50, 60 years ago, circumstances would be different.
for
But
sure.
we do have an opportunity here to use our voice or be a part of how we let this impact us. And it could be a different way. There could be a different approach to it this time. So now I just appreciate you sharing that perspective.
Yeah. And I would just say this too, man. Like, even that approach just starts with us. It
Mhm.
starts with you. Whatever your approach, it starts with you.
Yeah.
And that's the puzzle piece you play in the totality of this consciousness. Your experience that comes from you. See, because what I'm speaking to right now is my experience, and that experience is mine. And of course, it comes with some for now conclusions that I've come to. But the beauty of other people is that they have an experience too, and their experience
Mhm.
is totally different from mine. And once again, in the inconclusivity of this totality of a universe, it's like, why don't I bring that in? Why don't I be at peace so I can allow for that, even with people that I don't as much align with, but
Mhm.
that I know are part of the same consciousness that I'm a part of? I don't want to keep missing out on people that I don't agree with when I could learn about them and possibly even agree with.
Mhm.
You know, that's the balance I'm just trying to bring to myself personally. Because honestly, on a deeper scale, I just want to love people like that. I want to love
Mhm.
people in a genuine way. I want to be able to come to somebody no matter what their state of being and bring a sense of peace because of my state of being and nobody else having control of that but me.
Mm.
And if that's the love
Cool.
I want to portray, it starts with me. It starts with me.
Cool. And I feel like that gets to the aspect of you saying earlier. like that I don't know, and letting that open the door for curiosity instead of using it to form assumptions or letting your ego play into it. Is like letting that curiosity then opens the ground for more understanding, like you said, being at peace and just welcoming in whatever energy, but then giving that back off.
And you
And
you actually hit the nail on the head though too. I like to piggyback on that. Like you said it, like ego. If I say I don't know, there cannot be no ego in that because I don't know. So from the foundation, I literally removed my ego.
Mhm,
And I'm noticing it right now in my mind, but that's the bigger impact of just saying I don't know. Immediately you have to strip your ego to embrace, to just bring stuff in. Because you're
mhm,
acknowledging that there's things here to learn right now. So you're putting yourself in the position of a student instead of the position of a teacher.
ooh,
When I was young and I played basketball, most of my youth when I was playing, I was always in a student position. I never talked back. I ain't none of that because I'm learning. I'm in the midst of learning. I'm staying a student.
mhm,
So to basketball would be the same thing. The best thing I could do was say I don't know, so people can insert themselves and help me out, and I can go through that process. But being a student is where I learn the most. When I start teaching, yeah, I can learn if I'm humbled enough, but it's hard to give and receive at the same time, right?
mhm,
So, like, saying I don't know literally allows you to be a receiver, even if there's people that are there to listen to you, because some people are even healed by your ability to say, I don't know. And that'll allow me to play both parts. I'm always able and in a space to receive,
mhm.
but I want you to be in a space to receive like me if I'm going to give you something. And that fair exchange is kind of conducive to the energy that I'm trying to bring about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that growth-minded perspective, going back to what you were sharing just about our relationship with death, I think some of that comes with our wellness journey, because
Yes.
I think about myself, and we got into a little bit of this on the show with Denzel's platform, Create the Space. If it wasn't for being in therapy and working with a therapist, I wouldn't have developed a level of peace to go back and talk about some experiences of my own that I suppressed, and specifically talking about being sexually molested when I was younger, as I shared on the show, and not sharing anyone about it. But if I didn't have a sense of peace and understanding, like, hey, my life is finite. I don't want to go to the grave with this experience on my consciousness. I need to get it off my chest and talk about it and put it out there in the world to heal. And almost using wellness plus the aspect of the reality of death and wanting to live a life of fulfillment and peace of mind is being kind of like a catalyst to really mine that out. It got me to a point of being more open.
In opening yourself up that way, you literally had a funeral for that. As long as you held on to that, that was your formal funeral for that feeling or what you went through that you haven't expressed. That was your way of laying it to rest.
Yeah. Damn, I never thought about it that way, brother. And you're right. Because here's the craziest part. I was ready to go to the grave with that.
Man,
And the fact that, like you said, putting it out there and being like, hey, this is an experience that happened through therapy. I've been able to develop a new perspective on it. I never thought of it in that way of giving that experience a funeral. So I appreciate that perspective, Harvey, you shared, because then also it gave life to conversation in that space that
mhm.
you talked about, how it was impactful for you.
That was the biggest thing for me because, instantly I thought about how many things that I haven't acknowledged, that it took a lot of strength for you to acknowledge in front of everybody. But the ripple effect, the domino effect that happened was like that. Look at the impact it left immediately. Like that leadership, even though like you're maybe not even looking at it as leadership in that moment, you're just being vulnerable. But that leadership allowed people to open up in ways you never even saw coming, right? And resonate with your story. And it's like, dang, in the midst of you sitting there having a funeral for this thing, you realize, okay, I'm not alone. So other people probably just having some funerals right now too. And
Mm,
that's why,
mhm,
once again, relationship with death, right? Death is more common than we think. It's so many people that's trying to have a formal funeral. Nia talked about that to me. My therapist talked about that to me. Like,
mhm,
have you laid that old you to rest that you feel like you need to get away from?
mm, mhm.
Like, have you had a proper funeral for her? Because it's like we can say it's away for forever, but until you acknowledge it and let it off, it's really not. It's there.
Yeah, man. I'm just thinking through like, wow, a new perspective on death that you've just given me. And this is going up as a bonus episode, but given the listeners of death and the power of vulnerability can give life. It could give death to our fear-based thinking when we maybe open up about something or our old thought patterns or old belief systems that we can give death to by being vulnerable and using that
Mhm.
as a superpower in the space. And then in addition to that, it opens us up if we just explore it with some curiosity to
Curiosity.
so much more appreciation, to so much more being more mindful and intentional with how we spend our time and what we do.
Mhm.
Like I said, man, that's just it opens up the floodgates
Really
in a
does.
great way.
It really does. And once again, like the ability to be a leader in that space and not even understanding what you're doing in that space. Look at like the healing that came immediately before the other guys even said, okay, like I've been through that too. It was like,
Mhm,
dang, like he let that off. Woo, that's some real grown man shit. Like that's some real, like that. It meant something, the impact in that room. And I will say this, man, I think because I'm a genuine person, I have a lot of life coaching experience. I'm an energy person too. And the energy in that room just, it shifted so heavy. It uplifted us so much. It opened up so many vessels of breath when
mhm,
you just from being vulnerable. It showed itself in that moment to be a superpower. It showed itself, man. Like men, we don't talk to each other like that. And for
mhm.
us to open up about something like that and then go into conversation about it, you know how powerful that is. And for people that's going through that at home to hear that, you know how powerful that is. It's like we can all have this funeral together. That's your whole community, a whole community
Mm.
of people that could possibly be listening to how they can have a proper funeral for something they need to let go of.
Yeah, bro. And what bonded us was wellness. And let's be honest, like I don't know about for you, Harvey, but I can speak for myself. Like
Mhm.
therapy is something that I've taken and used as an active tool, but I want to say within like the last year or two. So we're talking at least 32 years of my 34 years of life.
Mm.
I'm just getting it started on this. I'm in like still the first quarter of it. And so in spaces where there's us men, that's not something that commonly comes up. And
Mm-mm.
so I'm wondering from your perspective, like what are some of the barriers that you see that prevent us men from exploring therapy, seeing a licensed professional to talk about some of these things that might be suppressed with a therapist, but then even in a larger group of men, because you get a group of guys together, typically we're talking about sports, we're talking about relationships, all those kind of superficial things almost on the surface level, but we're not diving into our fears or experiences from our childhood that damn we're not really alone in. So for you, like was there any barrier to you getting into therapy, and are there any common barriers that you think hold us men back from even exploring it and using it and seeing the value of it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Honestly, my parents separated at 14 and they asked me if I wanted to go see a therapist. And the first thing I said was, I don't trust y'all. You expect me to go trust somebody I don't know?
Mm. Woo.
And as a black man, I think we have a fear of somebody not like me, not understanding me. And I think that's the importance of establishing a safe community, even if some of that community has to be people that look like you first. Establishing that to share yourself and be able to dive into that is like, it's huge. It's
Mhm.
huge. But I think most men in this society are kind of hesitant to take a form of therapy because a lot of times it exposes their weaknesses, right? Or
Mm.
what may be considered a weakness to them. And it goes back to our emotions. And we don't really want to deal with that emotionally because a lot of stuff that we haven't had to deal with, we didn't have to deal with. So it's like, I'm not dealing with that. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to
Mhm.
stay away from that. But the fear of the unknown, right? The therapist is there to make you deal with some stuff. So it's like you gotta ask yourself that question: do I want to deal with this stuff? And I just feel like it's always good to confide in other people that can ask you a question differently than you ask yourself that question. therapy or not.
Mm-hmm.
Therapy or not, just from conversation, just for you to be asked a question so you can go through your own self exploration. But therapy has been huge in my later years because what I realized, the biggest thing that I realized in the last year, I cannot do this alone. I
Mm-hmm.
am in this consciousness with everybody. And the more
Mm-hmm.
I run away from other people, the more I damage myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, we get into these isolated spaces to understand ourselves. But when you start to understand yourself, you realize that you're just one of the puzzle pieces. And in order for the picture to really come out nice, you need all the other puzzle pieces. And we get so caught up in making the picture with the puzzle pieces we have instead of gathering all the rest of the puzzle pieces. Right. And in life, that's what life's about. It's about gathering up puzzle pieces. And then you can kind of decipher that picture for yourself. But there
Mm-hmm.
is it's too many pieces to really come to a conclusion and just say, okay, well, I'm going to just make this picture. Because the overall picture will never stop.
Yeah.
So, I've gotten away from trying to get to this conclusive puzzle and just appreciating the fact that I'm one puzzle piece. Now I want to find all the rest of the puzzle pieces, which means going to all the other places I can go and indulging myself with all the other puzzle pieces that I can so that this picture can start making more and more sense to me as I take this journey.
That's beautifully well said because I find so much adventure in that perspective, Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
That's like living once, twice right there, where you're like, you know what? I'm going to let go of thinking I got this whole thing figured out. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to let go of this whole nature that everything is scripted and I got to just follow this one path. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to chase the spirit of adventure, let my curiosity lead the way, try things out. But then also, I love what you talked about this. You can't do it alone. In the book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, he talks about exactly your point.
Mm-hmm.
This world is interdependent. You
Yes.
cannot go through this alone. You can't.
Yes.
We're
Well, you got
learning
to
right
think about
now.
it. All the information we've gathered has been from outside of us. We're just taking it and molding it for ourselves. But all
Mhm,
of it has come from something else. All
mhm,
of it. So, like, just being thankful for that, right? It's like, dang, none of this information really came from me. Like, I can decipher things within it for myself. But all the information I'm getting is come from mama, daddy, grandma's, grandpa's friends, all of these different people that come into
mhm,
my life, even if they was only there for a second or they was there for a long time. All these different things, all this accumulation of different things have impacted the way I'm shaped today. So
mhm,
it's always had an effect. I just didn't want to look at it as I wanted to look at it as if I needed to get away from the effect they was having instead of embracing myself within the effect that they're giving to me. Because it's like I can take whatever I want from that. But for somebody to be able to have their effect or to be able to give their energy is only going to open up my capacity because I'm allowing a new experience to come in my space.
mhm,
Yeah. And that's important, man. Like, and I've been running away from that because of how mad I was with the world not being truthful, with society not being as straightforward or truthful as I want it to be. But this is my journey. I
mhm.
got to be truthful with me because the world is being truthful with them to the capacity that they feel they being truthful. So, I
Yeah.
can't even expect that from my communities. All I can do is embrace whatever conflicts we have and be at peace for myself so that we can have conversation around it. And I think my inability to be healthy before has made me run away from conversations that I didn't want to deal with or didn't want to have. And now I'm looking forward to having conversations and I being a better culprit within influencing the energy in that space, which is the
Mm.
energy of peace that I want to
Let me ask you this because you and I know we could go all night long, so we'll
bring.
get ready to wrap it up. If
Okay.
your younger self, Harvey, met you today, what would younger Harvey be most proud of?
Younger Harvey would be most proud of me never wavering to the beliefs that were given to me. Like, even though they resonated with me in some points, I never
Mhm,
just said, okay, this is what it is. I've always had this challenging spirit that never gave me this conclusion. And I even wrote down something. What did I write? Let me see if I can bring it up. I said, I was raised in the church and I had a hard time believing that people were wrong for not being Christian or raised in my area. It's like for me, I always had in the back of my mind that so if I'm this way because of where I was born, and there's people in the world in other places that could have totally different beliefs, then what makes them wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And why am I just right, or why is our beliefs just right? And then in my spirit, that never resonate with me. So the biggest thing that I'd be thankful for my younger self was just sticking with my spirit, with the spirit in which I was feeling like, okay, I need to continue to understand myself and get to this space of I don't know. Because man, it took me 30 years to get to I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It took me 30 years instead of trying to get this, man. What's my purpose? What is this? What is that? Like, I don't know. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
living. I'm a being. I'm here to share. I'm here to grow. I want to put myself in different situations, and it's all
Mm-hmm.
up to me. This is an adventure. Like you said, it's an adventure. Why am I making this some kind of one track thing?
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that, man. Like, I'm thankful that I went against just the beliefs of my parents and beliefs
Mm-hmm.
of my grandparents. And I think I would have, if I could go back, I would have done it in a healthier way because I would have practiced being a little bit more healthy. But I'm glad I didn't waver to just submitting to those ideas. I've gotten to a place where I can believe that I don't know is my best answer. And I'm so thankful for this route, man. I'm so thankful to get to this space that is giving me more and more peace every day.
Man, Harvey, man, we're gonna have a couple more episodes of this
Uh,
type of conversation,
we might
man.
have to have a whole season dedicated to me and you, brother.
Seriously, we're going into it, y'all. Everything from vulnerability to death to peace of mind. Every stone is going to be left unturned, man. So
Yeah.
people need to watch out. So, Harvey, once again, can you just tell people where they can go to find you and just learn
Yes.
more?
Yes, I'm Imperfect Outlets with a Z. That's on Instagram. That's my website, imperfectoutlets.com. Life coach, basketball coach. If you go to my website, you'll see an experience that allows you to engage with me, tap into some of the different services I offer, and possibly just leave something, a feeling that you have, and just share it. Because I'm all about community engagement, and I just want to help people and share my experience and for others to see the value in their experiences. And that we don't have to live up to other people's titles, but understand your experience is your title. And man, I just want to share that sentiment. That's what my platforms are about. That's all love and openness and self exploration and vulnerability. So that's what I
Word,
got, man.
word. And speaking of love, man, you just know once again, man, I love you, King.
Love you
Much
too,
respect and
brother.
appreciation for you and to
Yes,
you
sir.
for everything and being a part of my journey. And my I don't know, I'm hopping on the I don't know train, that
Hey,
curiosity train with
hey,
you.
listen, that's gonna cause for a lot more podcasts. that I don't know spirit, man. That's gonna allow us to dig in like we never dug in before. So I look forward to it, buddy. For real.
Excellent. Well, listen, y'all, this is part 2 bonus episode. We couldn't contain it to just one. So once again, there's just so much superpower in your vulnerability and exploring these questions, these whys, and as Harvey talked about, even starting with our relationship to death gives life. It gives life an openness to peace, to curiosity, to more adventure, to fulfillment, an authentic way of living for yourself, but then even bigger, an authentic way of connecting with community as we're all just a piece of the puzzle to this overall collective that we have the pleasure to be a part of during our time on earth. And so there's so much meaning that you could derive for that, especially as you follow a script of your own creation, as we're once again all liberating ourselves. So follow this man once again, life coach Harvey Mills, founder of Imperfect Outlets, host of the Mills Pills podcast. Also, you'll have to check out Create the Space. There's just so
Yeah.
much to dive into if you just need to get some more of that energy from this man right here. So,
Could I add that too before we
of
get
course,
off? That
of
create the
course.
space, man. We have a membership, a community of men that look like us, that share our experience, but also have different professions, different backgrounds, and we just share. We talk, we listen, we learn, we hold space, we hold safe spaces. We definitely dive into bringing about a community that's for people that are looking for that healing for themselves and understanding their minds and want to do it in a healthy way. So I'm thankful to create the space for, really giving us that community and that village to piggyback off of and having me as a part of that. I really appreciate that. And Imperfect Outlets works right alongside Create the Space. So we would love to see the audience within our community and checking out our community, checking out what what we're learning and what we're sharing and the ideas that are going forth through our different experiences. So I think it's a lot that we can get from these spaces.
Most definitely, and shout out to the Denzel. I gotta
Yes,
have him
sir.
on here. I hear he's on my hit list, so yeah, you'll get to hear from Denzel soon. We're gonna make that happen.
Yes,
So,
sir.
folks, that is it for today's bonus episode show, part 2. Just want to thank you all for your presence and tuning in again. If you enjoyed this episode, please show your support by sharing the Living Once Twice podcast on IG, LinkedIn, or wherever, leaving us a review on iTunes, reaching out to you all again through the time and space that separates us to say, remember, your dream life is waiting for you. Go for it. You deserve it. Catch you later on Living Once Twice.